Hello, this is the Ramblings of an Undisciplined podcast for Thursday, July 28th, 2016. As of this recording, Sierra is still missing. So I'm coming to you from the man cave again today. I'm actually sitting at my desk. I thought I'd give you a little change of venue behind me. And for those of you in the video, obviously for you people on audio, not going to be much different. Today, I've got comments. I've got a number of comments that have been left, and I've been keeping track of them and letting them stack up, and today is comment day. So let us go right in. I've actually got comments from 2 different folks. Actually, I should take that back. 3 different folks today. Woohoo! Exciting stuff. Let's get to it. So the first episode was on episode 539, Safety. And that was where I was talking about how safe you feel if that relates to how civilized you are. And the wife, whose name is Jelaine, says, so what makes a large population center safer than rural areas? I feel much safer out in the country than I do in a city. In the Middle Ages, for instance, the population centers were sources of huge swaths of death due to disease and pollution. In the country, not so much. Would people living back then really feel safer in London than in Scotland or Wales? And then there's the whole issue of safety versus freedom. Governments built tyranny in the name of safety. I think it was Ben Franklin who said something like, those who give up liberty to purchase temporary safety deserve neither. Well, I guess what I was thinking of was kind of like going way back, probably before Middle Ages, but when you had marauding bands of Huns or Mongols or whatever, and that was the kind of situation where you came together for safety. You built up some walls and you fought together because that was more effective than trying to fight them in your individual bands or clans or whatever. And I think that was somewhat the case in the Middle Ages as well. That's why they had castles and stuff. That was for protection. Now, your comments you made about disease and pollution, I think that's a 21st century viewpoint on it. We know what was going on there with the water and things like that. So we know that there was an issue there because of that. But I don't know that anybody else would have known that at the time. I think that's something that looking back on it in hindsight, we can see that, oh yeah, we know it's a problem, but I'm not quite sure that they would have known. I could be wrong. I am not a scholar when it comes to medieval time frame, but that was my thoughts on it. But it makes some good points, especially in this day and age. There are people that are concerned about the concentration of people in cities, and that it might be more safer out in rural land. There are places in rural America where they don't worry about locking your doors and stuff like that. The next comment was on episode 544, Quick Change, where I talked about that Quick Change Act that was at the ballpark. And the wife chimed in. I think I have an idea how the glitter change was done. Remember, they had a tarp on the ground. Then when the guy tosses the glitter, there's so much of it that it hides the fact that she's dropping her current dress. It falls down under the tarp underneath all the glitter, and she has on a new dress, which may be one reason they were being so careful in pulling the tarp up when they were done. The large polka dot change might have been done similarly, but I don't remember for sure if there was a tarp underneath her for that one. You could be right on the glitter one. I would have, my inclination is to say there wasn't a dress down there, but there was so much glitter. I kind of thought the tarp was just to help them pick up the glitter, but it could have hid her dress as well. For the polka dot one, I am certain that there was no tarp under her for that. So that one is still a mystery in my brain. All right, the next bit of feedback came from, I believe, Gary. Yes. So he was commenting on episode 540, Grilled Cheese. And he says, I'm with you on this one. Grilled cheese sandwiches are great. Thank you for clarifying that you don't use Chinese food, or cheese food, yes. I grew up using that stuff for fish bait, and I thought my wife was nuts when she used it to make mac and cheese. And back to the topic, I can't speak to the mayo idea, but I like to add crushed garlic, grated Parmesan cheese, and whatever else sounds tasty to the butter I spread on the bread. That makes it a nice tasty crust on the sandwich. As for the best one I got in a restaurant, that goes to a little panini place in Brugge, Belgium. I'm probably mispronouncing that. They made one with Camembert cheese that was out of this world. I have to admit that the cheese food stuff, I grew up on cheese food because we didn't know any better. Like I said, my sister kind of triggered onto the difference, and that turned us on it. But that was after I was married. So I think I spent most of my childhood eating cheese food. And it's now scary to me that if you see food on on a package that it's probably really not. At least not as much as you think it is. There is a restaurant near work that has an adult macaroni and cheese. I don't know what all they put on it. They do a couple different types of cheese. Not macaroni and cheese, grilled cheese sandwich. And they may do it on panini as well. I've had panini grilled cheese and those are really good. And then they pair it with a tomato basil tortellini soup. So you get this nice tomato basil bisque kind of soup, but then there's tortellinis in it. It's like, ooh, that's a good lunch. Good lunch. All right, another comment from Gary on episode 541, Polarized. And that's where I was talking about how polarized our society is. And Gary says, I still think that the media businesses are at the root of the polarization of America and beyond. In order to attract viewers, they lean as far to one side as they can without crossing the lines too far. They sensationalize stories that would otherwise be unremarkable. They play up or play down certain stories to slant the news, to appeal to the audience they're trying to reach. Ted Turner thought he was doing us all a favor when he created the 24-hour news channel, but all he did, IMHO, is fill a void that didn't really need to be filled. For example, covering big stories live when there is no information to report has turned the reporters into play-by-play commentators. Yeah, that's a good point. I do agree with you on that. That I think that a large part of that polarization can be laid at the media's feet. It can be laid at the government's feet. And that was one of those things that I meant to include in there, and then it was like afterwards, it was like, oh, I forgot to say this and this and this. I think that was a long one already. So I was just like, well, I'll let that lie. But now we can address that. Also on safety, from Gary, I don't think that safety is completely tied to civilization. As individuals, we can do things to make us feel safer. I think that civilization makes it easier to feel safe since there's a larger pool of people to draw from. We don't have to try to come up with our own solution for things, and that makes us feel unsafe. True. Once again, I was kind of going for the Walking Dead kind of thing, I think, really, is that, if zombie apocalypse is going, you probably want to have more people to help fight the zombies. Episode 538, also on Weekend Recap. Gary says, I've read both Borrowed Time and Stolen Time and have been thinking about a possible new title. I was thinking that maybe something that builds off the main character's name, such as The Relevant Files, Borrowed Time, or maybe even play off your naming of the set of books, The Relevant Technology, Borrowed Time, or Relevant Chronology, excuse me. The problem with relevant, I like the pronunciation of relevant, and there's meaning behind how I came up with that name. The problem is, and I didn't realize this right away, is, I pronounce it relevant, or relevant. That's relevant. But it's the same spelling as the word relevant. And we pronounce it relevant. And so people are going to see the relevant files or the relevant chronology, and they're going to think we're talking about relevantness and not necessarily a character's name. So I kind of like the relevant chronology. I was thinking about that quite heavily, and I haven't totally abandoned it, but it didn't really work out quite the way I thought it was going to. So I'm still noodling that one really hard. So the next comes on from the wife on episode 546, CPAP frustration. And this is actually just a critique on what I'm talking. And this is something I inherited from my mother, and that is I spend too much time worrying about trying to identify when something happened. And I remember it used to frustrate me about her because she'd literally sit there for 2 minutes trying to figure out was it Tuesday or was it Wednesday. So I do need to stay away from that. So that's a fair criticism. I have no, I can't say anything about that because she's 100% correct. I am going to try to not do that in the future. Let's see, we already did that one. And we just did that one. My friend Laura, who is commenting on episode 549, Miscellaneous Monday, where I was talking about my progress with borrowed time, or with wayward time as the working title. I guess I should call that a working title now since I'm planning on changing it. She just says, more book, more book. She's waiting for me to get that out on audio for her. So I'm working on it as fast as I can. Fiercely I am. And then last bit of feedback coming from the wife on episode 548, Ghostbusters, where I was talking about Chris Helmsworth's, I think that's how you say it, his role on Ghostbusters where he was basically Beefcake. And apparently I had separated eye candy and Beefcake as two different things. Eye candy being female and Beefcake being a male. And she comes back, so how come Beefcake is not also eye candy? Because it looks like broccoli to you, ... And yeah, that's fair. That's fair. It should, you know, eye candy is not necessarily a thing that you would say just for an attractive female. So I'll buy that. Yeah, I guess I don't know what the equivalent is. You know, because Beefcake is you know, somebody like that's really, really attractive. I don't know what the equivalent would be of Beefcake for a woman. You know, eye candy is usually what I hear used. That's not really a phrase I tend to use a lot. It's not like I can walk around and go, oh, what a nice piece of eye candy she was, you know. So it's not a usage that I use in my daily language. So I guess I don't know what the equivalent is. Maybe I should just look that up as a linguistic exercise. Or leave me a comment. How meta would a comment on a comment episode be? But that's all I got. That's all the comments. So I'm going to let that be that. I will be back on the road tomorrow. I'll be talking to you then. So be seeing you.